So recently, there's been a lot of debates on who Black people are or where they originate from because, like, everybody thought that Black people originated from Africa, but now they're saying they're not. And, like, here's the thing, they're not lying because, like, most of their history has been flipped around, like, most of their history has been erased for a long time. That's why every time they're claiming different origins, everybody's calling them crazy. But today, in our history segment part 3, we're going to be covering what are their true origins, at least based on my understanding and based on how, also based on history, documented history, because like this history is there. It's just more like the names were switched up because like back then there was no such thing as black. Like the term black was actually supposed to mean melanated people, like melanated beings, because like nobody calls Africans black. Like we didn't even know we were black until we came here. Like they only use black to refer to black Americans or black people who are not from Africa originally. But here's the thing, there's so many theories on where black Americans are from. And here's the thing, some of them were originated from Africa. Like they were descendants of African people because like again during slavery they did go in Africa and brought some people. But here's the thing, it wasn't like a lot of people like that. Like it wasn't a lot of slaves because like they always underestimate Africa, but Africa had a good army base. Like Africa was good when it came to protecting itself. That's why they managed to secure their land this whole time, because like Africa is one of the only continents that has all the resources and minerals that you need to survive here. And that's kind of what colonization and slavery was all about. But for a long time they tried them and they couldn't catch them. The only place they managed to colonize or to take over was like like the northern Africa, and that side of Egypt. So here's the thing, if you're actually trying to find out or to figure out their history, like black Americans history, you have to revisit history in general, like all our history as humans, because like there's been so much that has happened. That's kind of what I kept talking about in my last videos. Like every time we talk about African history or black people history, we always talk about colonization and slavery. But I always say there was so much more to our history than slavery and colonization. And every time you keep putting it in that box of slavery and colonization, you're not gonna find out what really happened. So I'm gonna give you my theories on what origins I think black people came from. So first thing first, some black people, they actually originally, or their ancestors were originally from Africa. Like I said, slavery did reach Africa, but like the slavery that happened in Africa was one of the last slaveries that happened. Like slavery was already a big thing in different continents and different countries way way before it reached Africa. And when you do research, every time they talk about Africa, they always try to minimize it to slavery and colonization. But those were like the last years of Africa, way before like the 20th century. And it only happened a few centuries. Like there was so much to African history way before that. Why do you think the Bible and all this history, they always go back to Egypt? They say Egypt, but then they won't admit that it's Africa. Like Egypt is in Africa. Like it really doesn't take a blind person to see that. But when you start tracking those things, that's when you understand. And a lot of Africans are coming for black people because like black people are denying, accepting that they're African. And a lot of Africans are coming for them. But the thing is like those Africans who are coming for them is because like they also didn't learn their history. Because like they did not just learn, like they did not just lie about black history, they lied about African history too. So Africans, we also need to go and revisit our own history, because our history that we're taught in school was written by somebody else. Literally, the books that I grew up reading about African history, they were all written by white people. They were all written by Europeans. So it's like that's not the right history that happened. That's their history. So you have to go and revisit your own history too. And another origin is some black people were natives to America, because again, there was already a lot of people living in America, on the American continent, way before Europeans found it, way before Europeans even took over. Like there was already other people living here, not just the indigenous people, but also like black people were here too. But these black people had originated from different places, and that's what we're going to talk about again too, because again that history is way way longer than you can even like comprehend. Like their history is so long. That's why everybody seems to be confused about their true origins, because like they used to move around everywhere. Like black people, the ones who are in America right now, and the ones who are on the American continent, they're way different from Africans. But that's because Africans were always here. That's why nobody even can take our history away, because like we've always been here and we've always been on that land that's called Africa now. It was called different things. Like most of our countries, or almost of the tribes in Africa right now, they track back to like as long as Africa as a continent existed. Like they've never been moved anywhere. The only thing that our ancestors used to do is like migrate. So like the Bantu people, for example, they've existed on the African continent for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Like when you track back history, you can't really find any other race on the African continent except Africans themselves. But that's why it's so important for all of us to revisit our history so we understand these things. Another origin of black people is Atlantis. So like I know most of you guys have heard about Atlantis, or like the story about the people from Atlantis, and like they always told us that was mythology. But in order for you to understand black people history, you have to revisit mythology as well, because like everything that they told us that was mythology was never actually myths. It's actually things that happened, and everything that I told you that happened, it actually didn't happen. So like things in the Bible and stuff like that, the things that they've been teaching us our whole lives, most of that stuff didn't even happen. It was just made up. But the true history that happened is you find it in the mythology. Like those myths that I told you, that's what the true history is. So my next theory is most black people, they're descendants of Atlanteans. So if you visit the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Atlantean, he when he describes like when he came here, because like when they landed here, so these were advanced beings from a different planet, and they describe themselves like they looked like us, just a little advanced, but also like taller as well. Like they were advanced in technology, they were advanced in different things, but they said they looked like the people who are already inhabiting Earth. So those are the Africans, because again, Africans are the only race that actually has been here for the longest time. So when Atlanteans came here, they in their books they say there was already people living here, and those were the Africans. That's why in Thoth's book he lands in Egypt, so which was called ancient Kemet, which was land for black people. And like, but then that here's the thing, those people were also called melanated beings. Like these advanced beings, they were also called melanated beings. Like their names changed over time, because like the planet they had come from, they had different colonies, but also they had different tribes, they had different races. So when they came here, they looked exactly like us, but they were bigger. But these stories, like they go, you can track so much history, and they talk about these advanced beings over and over, and the Sumerians talked about them too. So like another theory is black people are actually the Sumerians. They're the descendants of the Sumerians, because like even when you search up the race for Sumerians, they say, oh, so the Sumerians, you can't really track race. They didn't really have race back then. It was just more about class, this and this, because it was mixture of different races. But me personally, I think it's because like that origin was black people's origin. That's why a lot of black people are going to tell you they're not from here. That's because originally they're actually not from here. So over time, when you visit history, you realize there's been so many advanced beings that have come here from different planets. That's what today we call aliens and extraterrestrials. But back then they used to call them gods. They used to call them advanced beings. So like even when you read like African history, African mythology, they also had these gods coming. Like these gods used to come here from higher dimensions, from different planets, from different star systems. They'll come here and help and like visit. Some of them were good, some of them were bad. But here's the thing, I think some of those people, some of these beings were actually the people we know as black people. And that's also why they kept enslaving them and trying to erase their history. But also, that's why black people don't have a language. So, you know how every ethnicity or every race, they have a language they always track back to? And black people don't have that. They only have English. But also English was just invented not too long ago. Like English was never a language, it was just a language that was made up. So that means English is not really originally their language. So that also takes me back to Atlanteans. So Atlanteans, they used to speak a language that we didn't know. and most of their language was like it was symbols and stuff like that, and only they understood that language. But obviously over time they killed them off, over time they erased their history, over time things change. But like they started adapting to different races. That's why they started as Atlanteans, and then and then there were Sumerians, and then over time they became different races. That's why everywhere they went they adopted to different races. That's why right now you have the Jamaicans, you have like people in the Caribbeans, like they're all black people, but like they've adopted different cultures. But that's how black people used to be, like the melanated people used to be. So the reason why they're called black is because again, black back then it meant melanated, but that's because there was so many advanced beings that came here on Earth, like that came here to visit, but they were all different races. And these beings specifically, who we know now as black people, they were the only ones who were melanated. That's why they came originally to Africa, because like those were the people they would looked like. So like they came here and helped us with like agriculture, they helped us with technology, like all those pyramids in Egypt, all those stuff. We were helped with by these advanced beings. But here's the thing, the term aliens right now, when we hear it, it sounds so scary, but like that's not how it used to be back then. It was just more like visitors from other dimensions and visitors from other planets. And some people started deifying them, so like calling them gods, which also became a whole different problem. But in Africa, we never really called them gods at the beginning. We call them, just we knew there was other kingdoms up there, but like they called it mythology. But again, if you're trying to learn history, you have to understand like there's no such thing as mythology. So stop coming for black people. Go learn their history, and go learn your own history too. Other races think they're safe, but you're not safe too. They lied about everybody's history. They lied about African history. They lied about Asian people history. They lied about European history. So you can keep hiding behind your race, and instead of going there and learning about other people's history and your own history. We're here to unlearn all these things. That's why I started this segment, Our History. It's not just about black people, it's not just about African people, it's all our history, like as humans. That means I'm going to be covering different races as well, like different history as well. It's just like this is the beginning.